Hello and welcome everyone to the Movement Made Better podcast. We are very excited today to have the creator of the mobility wall, Chris DiVecchio. So Chris, we'll turn it over to you if you wouldn't mind giving listeners a little introduction on yourself, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Pleasure to be here. Been a big fan of stick mobility for a long time now, so it's an honor to bring our two products together and bring all of our minds together and share a little fireside chat. I've been in the fitness industry for over 20 years. I have a health and wellness coaching business that I've been running for over 15 years now, working with clients all over the world. Within the last few years, I've almost fully transitioned my entire client base to remote training and coaching, which has given me the ability to scale up and work with clients in all areas of the world, which has been great. And over the years of working with all these clients, mobility, soft tissue work, posture and alignment have been really major staples of my health and wellness program. And myself being a Division I college hockey athlete and amateur bodybuilder, my body has been through all of the ups and downs with injuries and tweaks. And so I've continued to explore and find new ways to improve the way my body looks, feels, and functions, battling with some of the current solutions on the market that just weren't getting it done. So it inspired me to sort of seek out my own ideas and concepts of how I could develop the ultimate tool to help improve some of the conditions that I was dealing with, as well as some of the issues that I see on a day-to-day basis with my clients. Prescribing homework for my clients had always been an issue because the current solutions of getting on the floor and trying to deal with the pressure of gravity and balancing and stabilizing yourself while putting strain on your wrist and shoulders was also a major issue, and was sort of deterring people from wanting to engage in that work that they were supposed to be doing on a regular basis when they weren't with me in the gym. So mobility wall became the concept and the idea, which was to take the whole foam rolling and trigger point therapy concept and put it into a vertical position, as well as put you in three-dimensional space to give your body the ability to not only foam roll and do the tissue work, but also mobilize at the same time. So about 2.5 years ago, a close friend of mine who was a handyman built the first prototype, which looks nothing like what the current model is today on the market, which was it's fun to go back and see the early stages, the prehistoric stages of the product and how it developed through several different iterations. But it took us about 1.5 years or so to bring the product to the current state of where it's at now. We launched on Kickstarter February last year, had a successful Kickstarter run, did over about 100,000 on Kickstarter in 4 weeks. We broke our $25,000 goal within the first 4 hours of launching on Kickstarter. So we got our market validation at that point, knew that we had the right idea and concept, and there are people there looking for these types of solutions. And we've been to market now for the last 6 months and have been really well received. We've connected with several professional athlete organizations. We're pretty deep into the NFL right now currently. We're connecting with practitioners all across the country because we believe that building those relationships with the educators is going to be the main focus of how we're going to help continue to get mobility wall on this new concept to market, where we can educate people on the idea of being vertical and also learning how to utilize mobility wall as a way to self-assess and address issues that they're dealing with on a regular basis and continue to encourage this habit of daily self-care.
Yeah, I love the practicality of it. The fact that it is much more accessible to much more of the demographic versus being on the floor, which for a lot of people is, yes, like you mentioned, really like bad knees, bad wrists. People are just not going to, they're like, nope, sorry, not going to do it. So to remove those obstacles is just fantastic.
Yeah, I think it really has been a problem that I've seen for a long time is, when I watch somebody get on the ground and try to foam roll, if you've seen anybody put pressure on their IT band, which is one of the first places most go, right? It's excruciating. And at that point, the nervous system is flaring up. People's bodies are tensing up and stiffening up, which becomes counterintuitive to what we're trying to accomplish with foam rolling and soft tissue work to begin with. And so the idea of being vertical not only gives you greater access, but it also gives the user the ability to control that pressure so that if they set the bar at just below their hip height and they're working their IT bands, by adjusting your angle or how much you're using your legs as a driver to put pressure into that that device, the foam roller. If it's too much, you can easily back off. If you need more, you can easily drive into it. So it really gives the user the ability to control that pressure easily from that vertical position, which is really important in balancing the nervous system and muscular integrity of allowing us to work inside of that tissue to be as effective as possible.
Yeah, I think that's what I liked about it, the most was you're able to control how much tension you wanted, but also, control your body around it. So you're working a certain tissue line, but then you're also able to move and strengthen other areas in your body too.
Yeah. I think to your point too, working that tissue line, it's, one of the things that I find really effective as well is that even if you're on the table getting some body work done by great massage therapists, there's nobody who knows that those areas better than you. You're the one who's getting that internal feedback. So as great as a massage therapist can be, they might be missing the mark a little bit, whereas you could be following along a tissue line. You're not quite there. You're not quite there. And then all of a sudden, bam, like you found that spot and now you pin and hold. And now you can articulate, a conjoining joints and mobilize, other joints and areas around that tissue to start opening up some of that restriction and limitation that you're getting in that tissue, and then continue on along that line to find some other areas that may be locked up as well. And you can do it very easily, very, gracefully, I guess is another way to put it, right? Like you can just slowly scan. And that's why I like to use that phrase, assess and address, because if you're on the ground trying to find and scan along that tissue line, chances are you're pressing down, then you're pushing yourself back up again, you're coming off of it, you're like all over the place, struggling, trying to control your weight on the ground. Whereas in that vertical position, you have so much more control to follow those tissue lines with a little more grace and fluidity.
Yeah, and the practicality too, and the ability to use the door frame or the squat rack, if you put in the squat rack, is just really nice and stable position, easy on the shoulders if you're working the lower extremities or hip region, and be able to lock in. So you're just got that nice closed chain if you need it, and then you can just start to explore and really start to get into those nooks and crannies a little bit more.
Yeah, the two unique factors is really the upward pressure and the inward pressure, right?
Yeah.
So I took you both through the demo.
Yeah.
So you both saw it. There's very few times and very few movements that you would use downward pressure at all with mobility wall, because the effectiveness of setting the bar up high and coming up underneath and using that upward pressure to drive and using your legs to drive into it, or just using that inward pressure to drive into it, they're the two most differentiating factors of this device. And again, I think, to your point, you have those abilities to stay in much more control, whether it's closed chain, open chain. And, and then obviously we had the idea to pull stick mobility in as a way to take it to a whole nother level of creating leverage and stability and just helping to passively take your body to new ranges of motion that might not be able to get to even, without the stick, and push it even further, which is really nice.
And so now you have two different versions. You have a smooth version, and then you have the one with the knobs on them, right?
Yeah, so we have, exactly. So we created two different models. One, we wanted to have it available for all walks of life and different types of techniques, right? Some people who get soft tissue work, when you go in to get a massage, they want it a little bit more gentle, and other people like it a little bit deeper and can tolerate it a little bit more. So, and then there's just different effects that you want to go for. If you're just trying to smooth out or iron out some fascia and like a tissue line, the smooth roller is generally a better option for that. If you're looking for deeper, like pinning and stretching techniques, the Pro Series, which is our sort of like our rumble roller version, is a better option for that. So they're wanting to create two different options for all walks of life in this category. And, they both can be really effective. I would consider the smooth roller sort of like the beginner intro product, whereas the Pro Series may be a little bit more advanced. But there's lots of techniques that you can do with both that are applicable to any type of athlete or everyday.
So with the pro teams, starting to adopt this, have you seen it more in the movement prep side or more in the recovery side of things?
I'd say it's probably 50-50. I think a lot of what I'm finding, interestingly enough, is that a lot of people have not considered doing soft tissue work prior to their workout, And so what I've discovered over the years of my own training is that before I come into any workout, if I'm working upper body, if I'm doing like a big pressing or pushing day, that I want to open up my upper pec, my anterior delt. I want to open up my traps, levator scap, even open up my lats so I can get more extension overhead. And so prior to workout, I think this has huge effects and huge impacts, especially for professional athletes. They tend to go into their workouts with poor movement patterns because of tension and limitation. And so they're strengthening these postures in their body that become major limiting factors and set themselves up for injury and pain and discomfort down the road, whether it's back in the gym or whether it's on the field or whatever sport that they're in. So I think just through some of the education that I've been providing, taking some of these athletes through the demos that we do that you both have experienced, it's sort of opening their eyes to this concept of using mobility wall to improve their initial movement before they even get into the gym and start hitting movements that are loaded. So it's sort of opening that up for them, that potential. But then obviously they're coming into using mobility wall for the first time with different types of injuries and pains and restrictions in their body. And so they're finding that post-game, post-workout, or just some of the chronic issues that they're dealing with, whether it's anterior rotation, the shoulders and elevated traps, or whether it's a tight locked up hip and QL, they're finding that just using this on a regular basis as part of their rehab and recovery is extremely effective as well. And then it's also, showing and playing out on the field in their work, which is great.
To see still how many people really don't even know about the benefits of doing some soft tissue release and some foam rolling. I think everybody, because we talk to ourselves and in our own industry, but yet in the general public, there's so few people that really understand what they're getting out of this.
Totally agree. And, my big part of the mission when we launched this company was not only do we want to bring a great tool to the market, but we also want to bring the education to the market. And that's a beast of a challenge to take on as a company. As you guys have ever watched Shark Tank, you see any type of shows, the first thing they say is, if you have to educate the market, it ain't going to work because it's such a battle to take on.
Yeah.
But, like you guys, I'm so passionate about wanting to help educate people and teach people about how we can improve the way they move, the way they feel, and the way they function. Most people don't realize that they don't have to live in pain. There's things that they can do, and they can take that responsibility, that ownership themselves, if they understood a little bit more about the anatomy and understood a little bit more about some of the things they could do on a regular basis that could just buy back a little bit of, freedom and mobility and movement that could free them from this pain and discomfort that they're feeling. And I think it's really about how you present it. If it's presented in the language and the complexities that us as trainers and coaches that we know, then it's going to go right over their head. They're not going to be interested. But we find a way to connect with them and meet them where they're at and bring this level of education that can be sort of ground level introductory, and then marry that with a product that makes it also easy for them to do something on a daily basis. That's where I feel like we have a home run at really creating this shift in the market of teaching people how to improve their own bodies by implementing some of these small daily habits. And, one of the things that we've seen on social media quite a bit since we launched is we're getting sort of pushback from these practitioners that are feeling threatened by the product, thinking that we're here to take over their jobs, saying, this is never going to replace a massage therapist, or this will never replace. It's like, and we're over here sort of laughing, saying, guys, we're not intending to do that at all. We're actually trying to facilitate and complement the work that you're doing, because as practitioners, our jobs are to educate our clients and our patients that we're working with, to encourage them on things that they can do on their own beyond the work on the table, because there's nobody that's getting body work done 7 days a week by a massage therapist.
Yes,
right? No one has the time, and no one has the money to be paying for a massage 7 days a week, right? So every single massage therapist, PT, chiro is giving their patients or clients homework, but are they doing the work? No. A very small percentage maybe, but who are highly motivated. But there's a larger population of people who just don't do it because they don't know, they don't understand, and they don't have the right tools to make it easy for them to encourage these habits. And so we're really trying to build this relationship and build a bridge with these practitioners to show them how we're here to help complement their efforts so that as their patients are coming back to them
Yes.
after they've done some incredible work, that they're seeing this progress and their bodies and their tissues becoming more pliable and just healthier, where the work that they do on is easier on the practitioners. They don't have to bust their knuckles on their body to like get into these rock hard concrete slabs of fascia because their patients and clients are doing the work, right? So we're really passionate about trying to educate, just general population on the importance of, daily tissue work and just the benefits of how it can really help improve their quality of life. Because if we can take people out of pain, and if we can get people better range of motion and better mobility, then that means that they can get back to doing things on a daily basis and get back to activities that bring them joy, that make them happier, that make them better to themselves and better to other people in their lives. And it's just a cycle that it's a positive feedback loop that just keeps churning, right? Yep. So that's sort of the high level mission and passion for what we're doing here at Mobility Wall.
Yeah, it's funny. People will kind of overreact. They don't take that time to step back and think of what it is that this tool is going to bring to the table. Because a really good massage therapist, even if you wanted to see that person every day, they're not available, right? Because a couple of the massage therapists that I refer out to, they're like 2-3 weeks booked out.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do I do in the meantime, right?
Totally agree.
You know, so your business is always going to be there. It's okay, folks. You're not going to lose it. This is just
I liken it to like Starbucks. Yeah. People still make coffee at home, but people still go to Starbucks.
Right?
We're going out of business. We're not threatened by it. So it's like,
we get the same thing with the stick too. I mean, we're like, no, it's just another tool that you can put in the toolbox. It's not going to take away your business.
Yeah. No, it's funny.
Are you talking to coaches or talking to them about movement prep to see a better performance in the workouts as a result?
Absolutely. Again, I think that one of my favorite ways to frame it to customers, clients, strength and conditioning coaches is that if people's movement patterns unloaded aren't there, then how do you think that's going to translate when they're going through that same movement pattern loaded? Again, one of the things I love about Mobility Wall is that it translates the tissue and the fascia and that range of motion. It translates really, really quickly. Now, whether that new range of motion and mobility sticks, that's going to be a matter of time and consistency, right? That's if you hit Mobility Wall today and you don't do anything else for the rest of the week, then we know that tissue, that fascia is going to rebound. And so you've got to find ways to progress it. But prior to a movement in the gym, getting ready to open up your hips and open up your glutes and open up your QL and open up, even like the tibia anterior tib before you go into like a big leg day can have a major impact positively on how you're moving through all of those exercises when you go in. So then we start to strengthen in much healthier patterns while we're in the gym with loaded weight. So absolutely, it's a conversation that we're having with trainers and strength and conditioning coaches all across the country, and showing how we can help try to minimize injury and with the athletes, as well as improve strengthening and conditioning in healthier patterns for overall better performance.
Yeah, because we see if someone has a limited range of motion angle wise, then you're going to put way more demand and stress and energy leaks in the system. Where if you can give them a better access to more range of motion and actually increase and linear lines of support, then you actually increase weights.
I see it all the time. I'll work it with some of my own clients where I have them go through a squat and I can see that their ankle flexion is not there. The hip is locked up, right? Like the sartorius or the rectus femoris. And so we'll open up those areas for 5 or 10 minutes, working the anterior tib, work the calf, work that upper quad, and work the hip and like the medial glute. I'll throw them right back into a squat, and next thing you know, they're finding that nice vertical pattern. They're squatting down right down through their heels, and they're not overextending in the lower lumbar and pushing forward. And so the proof is in the pudding. It's one of those where I can take that movement pattern and adjust it within 5 minutes of just doing some tissue work that's very specific to the movement that they're working on. Now, reducing the compensations that they're typically developing when they're training. I see that all the time. People come and work with me that they're somebody who has been trying to build their glutes for the last 6 months and has been squatting and lunging, but can't figure out why they're not developing, is because their movement patterns are not where they need to be. Those lines aren't where they need to be. And they're overdeveloping and compensating in other muscle groups that are taking them farther and farther away from being able to develop their glutes. So so pre-workout and pre-movement pattern is huge with Mobility Wolf.
Yeah, that soft tissue combined with that active motion just creates much more awareness. So these, right away, right after you do it, you're like, oh, okay, I got more free movement in my arm. Now I just need to strengthen this freedom that I just created.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, again, it's hard with when you're dealing with general population, people who are not performance athletes, and they don't get paid for a living to go out and work out and exercise. The people who just are exercising and working out just for that health and wellness component. They just want to look good. They want to feel good. It's hard sometimes to get them to focus on the details of that type of work that we're talking about. They just can't wrap their minds around it. So putting the proof is in the pudding, right? Is being able to take them through. I asked them to hit the movement, or even like an overhead press. Their shoulders and their hands are pressing out in front of their bodies. And I'll get in and work their upper trap. I work their anterior delt. I'll work their posterior capsule, open up the lat and subscap. And then I have them go to an overhead press. And now they can go bicep to ear straight up overhead with full extension of that arm within 3 to 5 minutes of you doing some soft tissue work. Now, put a weight in their hands. That movement feels much better at that stage than it did previously, where they were pressing out overhead and straining that AC joint, in their shoulders. So it proves itself every single time.
I've been finding last few years post-chore active stretching or range of motion work, because I've had a lot of people that are either moving or doing gardening work, and we know that they're in these positions for long periods of time because they just get into these flow things, like they're doing this for 4 or 5 hours, and then they're like, oh, this is hurting. And you're like, okay, so if you've done this for 4 or 5 hours, then you should be grabbing a stick or something, another tool, and just reversing the angles. Unwind it, right? But it's like post-chore recovery work.
No, it's a good point. There's a lot of, everybody's so unique as individuals, and we all have different patterns that we hold in our bodies. We have different tasks and activities and hobbies and things we do for our jobs and careers. That's a great point. I even see people who stand a certain way. They shift their weight to their right leg, and their left foot is externally rotated at the hip, pointing out. They don't realize it. I'll point out, go, hey, stand straight, stand even. They're like, whoa, that feels weird. Like, it's just so comfortable for me to stand and lean with all my weight on my right leg and my left foot turned out. And they're developing and casting that pattern in their hips. Then they're going to the gym and working out with an internally rotated right hip, externally rotated left hip, and not thinking about how that's translating in the work they're doing in the gym. But if you can point out and help to make people aware of these daily patterns and habits that they're holding, whether it's, like you said, out there gardening for 3 hours, whether it's just standing. Like, I have a lot of real estate agents who stand a lot when they're showing houses, and their body holding different postures that just feels comfortable because that's a pattern they've developed. But really, it's doing damage and harm to the body. A lot of side sleepers, people who sleep on their sides for 6 to 8 hours a night with that major anterior rotation of the shoulders. Women who carry a purse on one shoulder, right? It's you see these uneven balances. You see these patterns that pop up. So aside from just being able to give people the encouragement to do soft tissue work, getting more specific and saying, hey, listen, start to think about and get aware of what are some patterns that you hold in your everyday life. Some people, even people who sit at the desk and work on the computer, yes, their shoulders are up. That's obvious. But also, too, I see a lot of people who go into anterior pelvic tilt sitting down, not realizing that they're getting that arch in their low back, their rib flares coming up, cores disengaged. So it's, so there's just all these, to your point, there's all these patterns that people are holding that you don't think about. The longer you hold those patterns, the more consistent you hold those patterns, you're casting that pattern into the body. And so it would only make sense that if you bring it to your awareness, spend a little time each day trying to unwind that pattern so it doesn't have as much saturation and sticking power.
I've been spending more time trying to get clients to understand the fluids of the body need to be able to move. As you move, the fluids move. And if we're just not moving, the fluid just is stagnant.
Yeah.
Our friend Lenny Parasino talks about that, right?
Talks about it all the time. He's like, if you don't move, then it becomes stagnant and an area dies, right? And then also you start to lose that neuromuscular connectivity to the areas that are not moving.
Yeah.
So yeah, Lenny talks about that all the time, and it's tried and true, you know?
Yeah. When Lenny told me about the old fish tank analogy, I was like, so easy to people get that. Like you tell that to a client and they're like, oh, I get it. Okay.
Totally. No, and that's my point, right? You break it down into more of a layman's and give a layman's example that really helps to resonate for people and makes sense that, you know, from there, they can start to figure it out. Bringing it to their awareness and bringing it to their consciousness is where I think it becomes key to helping people want to make this important. We can't make it important for somebody if it's not important to them. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, usually the soft tissue rehab type stuff doesn't get into someone's mind until they're really injured.
Exactly. You know, it's unfortunately it's more of a reactive state for people, right? And I think that's something that I've tried to really impose not only in my health and wellness business, coaching business, but also with Mobility Wall, is that you don't want to be waiting until you hit that pain point or that injury to do something about it. Right? There's things that we should be doing on a regular basis, or we could be doing on a regular basis to prevent that. But most people are usually very reactive to it, unfortunately. And the goal is to not have you go down that road. Sometimes people have to learn the hard way, you know. And then sometimes you learn the hard way once, and that's enough for someone to get into the habit of wanting to work on this stuff. It's not as doing the tissue work. It's not as sexy as it is to go in the gym and like hit a set of curls and like just feel that. You feel that blood pump. You get all those visceral responses that give you that immediate feedback of like the pump, the sweat. You feel like you're working hard, I'm doing something. For some people, when they're doing the tissue work, they come out of it and they're like, okay, right? But that type of work typically doesn't really show itself until there's been time and consistency. You go 3-4 months, no pain, no injuries. You can look at that and go, hey, there's something there. I haven't felt any pain or discomfort in my body. I'm sleeping well. I feel good. No headaches, no knee aches. I can run. There's no limitations. I can do whatever I want. I can jump. I can squat. I can bench press. I can do it. Like, that's gold right there. You tell somebody goes to the gym and they can't work out or they can't exercise because their knees bother them, because their ankles give them a problem, or their shoulders hurting them, or whatever it is. Now they're upset and crying about it. You know, it's like just the way it rolls. We have the function of knowing ahead of time, you know, how being proactive can really benefit that. Again, just part of the education process is trying to bring that to the table in the forefront as much as possible.
When you were doing your bodybuilding, was mobility focused training or segments a big part of that, or no?
Yeah, it wasn't. So it's funny because that was back in '99.
Oh, okay.
I had my first show. So, and that was on the heels of my hockey career. So growing up, kid, mobility work wasn't really a big component to programming. I don't remember ever a coach or a trainer or anybody ever telling me anything about shoulder cars or, you know, hip bars or foam rolling or, I mean, there was nothing. I mean, I don't even think there was stretching, you know, we stretched a bit, but there was none of that. It's interesting because I look back over my years of playing sports and I had all sorts of injuries. I tore my PCL. I've had some major like knee and ankle strains. Yeah, I mean, I battled a lot of injuries over the years. And, you know, I wonder what it would have been like had I, you know, been able to incorporate some of that work.
Right.
So the evolution in the fitness industry has been great to watch, you know, and being a part of that, watching that grow. So even though I think that, you know, there's still a lot of people where the awareness isn't quite where it needs to be, there's definitely been a lot more around it. It's great to follow other industry leaders on social media and just seeing more and more of it pop up, where there's some really, really impressive groups and people out there who are doing a great job, I think, educating on movement. And it's great to watch that.
So for someone like a bodybuilder, what would be some of the main points that you would try to inject into them about the importance of making sure that they're staying on point with mobility work?
Yeah, so I think from a bodybuilding standpoint, it's all about how the muscle is showing on stage, right? So as you guys know, if you just go in the gym and just train and work out, there's all sorts of compensations that are going to happen. It's going to create imbalances. You'll have, imbalances in your shoulders and your hips and your quads, calves. You'll see those imbalances develop. And I think from a bodybuilding standpoint, being able to have really good, healthy tissue, because they're training way more extensively than the average gym goer. So they're developing scar tissue, more adhesions that can lock them up and really limit their movement in the gym, number one. Number two, it can minimize any type of pulls and strains and injuries if you're keeping that tissue much healthier. And then also, two, just flushing out that tissue so you have better posture and alignment, which is going to put the muscles in much better position to show when they're posing and flexing on stage. Most bodybuilders get tons of body work and tissue work before they go on stage. Create more separation between the muscle tissue. You want to see the separation of the two bicep heads. You want to see the separation of the anterior delt, the bicep and the tricep. You want to see all that separation of the rhomboids and the traps, and all that in the back. So even in the legs with the quads, and want to show all that tissue separation. So that's where I think Mobility Wall has advantages for bodybuilders. You don't picture 250, 300-pound guys getting on the ground trying to foam roll and get into these areas of their bodies. That's impossible to reach. So they rely on a lot of manual therapy from their massage therapists to do that work for them, which is great. But then also to have that additional work that they can do on their own at home, it just takes it to a whole nother level for them.
Yeah, and massage therapists, if you're working on a bodybuilder, man, that is some hard work. Yes. Because you are sweating your ass off by the time you're done.
Oh, yeah. No, that's no joke. That's work.
I remember the first time I had a guy said, "Hey, can you stretch me?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure." Holy, I'm like, your range of motion sucks.
Help me out.
Yeah, I was like, holy shit. I was like, damn, I was sweating my ass off just trying to get this guy opened up. I'm like,
I know.
Oh my God.
Well, he's probably curling twice, two of you.
Yeah, he was a big dude. I was just all like, Jesus, okay. Yeah. Note to self, charge double. I was like, that was massive amounts of work right there. I was like, my workout was done for the day. I'm like, I'm good, right?
It was like doing that eccentric loading machine that you're working on right now.
Oh yeah.
Totally. Well, because too, also, I mean, if you've got limited range of motion and imbalances on some side, aesthetically, you're going to kind of look a little off from a muscular development standpoint, right? Exactly. One lat might be a little underdeveloped.
Bodybuilding, I mean, that's everything. Aesthetic, symmetry,
right? Symmetry,
keeping that balance. I mean, you could be 3-4% body fat up on stage, but if you've got one side off from the other, that can mean the difference between your placement, between second, first, or third, right? And so, because the judges, I mean, they're trying to find everything possible. So every bodybuilder is trying to get as much of an edge as possible. So if you can just show a little bit more separation between the muscles, that can be the difference between getting you a better placement on stage.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, I think it's something that I don't think enough bodybuilders give enough credit to or pay attention to, but it'd be a really interesting compliment to the work that they're doing, because they work their asses off in the gym. You don't want to hide any of that with just some gunked up muscle tissue and scar tissue. It's like, give yourself the opportunity to showcase all that hard work as best as possible.
I think going to your history of hockey too, what's interesting for me is still playing. The team that I've been with for years, it's been interesting to see the devolution or the devolving of some of my teammates over the years from where we first started, right? So, and I don't really say anything about what I do for a living in the locker room type thing, but you kind of just sit there and I'll say things every once in a while, like, you should try this, or I think you maybe should work on that. But then you kind of see how over the last 8 to 10 years, some players are kind of just starting to do this, right?
Yeah. It's funny because you don't want to go in there and feel like you're trying to tell people what to do.
No. Yeah.
It's kind of like, are you here to play or are you here to train me? What are you doing?
Yeah, just play it, right?
Just put the puck in the net. Don't worry about me, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, with all the knowledge that you have, this is what you do for a living, it's hard to look at that and not want to try to help and offer some sort of assistance to be like, man, I could improve that for you if you just take a few steps on and do this or do that. I mean, I totally get that. I see that all the time. When I go to the gym and just work out myself, I see people all over the gym, just sloppy form and, just foreign technique is off, or I'm seeing something with like a shoulder or like a hip. And I'm thinking, man, I could just go over and just give this guy a little nugget because I care, not because I'm trying to be some like,
right. Yes.
I genuinely care. And I don't want to see somebody hurt themselves. And if I could just give them a little something, a little tip that I know could improve or make a difference. The difference is whether or not they're open to receiving that. So
yes.
That's, we don't want it to also fall on deaf ears where it doesn't really matter, because then it's like, well, they don't really care anyway. So whatever. They'll figure it out a few years from now when they tear their ACL or when their shoulder blows out. But what are some of the things you see with on your hockey team that are some of the common?
Well, because a lot of the guys I play with are techies, right? So they're sitting pretty much all day, and then us, we're just hunched over in that flex position as we're skating most of the time, right? And it's interesting. Like, I've seen an increase over the years. You hear them complain about their back or their knee. Like, I've been seeing a lot of the younger kids. We got one kid on our team that's 22, and he's always complaining about his back, and I'm just all like,
So it's funny. One of the issues that I've had probably has like given me the worst issues over the last 6-7 years has been my left shoulder elevation.
Mm-hmm.
And I trace it back. And it's funny. I look back I've never done this before until like a few years ago, but I look back at photos from like 15, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was even worse back then, but I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
And it dawned on me, like, what pattern am I holding that is causing that left shoulder to go up so much on that side? And I was a right-handed shot in hockey. So that whole time, that's my high hand on the stick. That left shoulder was up my entire life. And then I started training heavy. So I didn't start lifting weights until after my freshman year, like really seriously lifting weights until after my freshman year in college.
Oh, okay.
So I got 6 other players from my prep school. We all got recruited to go build the D1 program at Quinnipiac University.
Yeah, nice.
So when you're playing hockey in high school, you're 14 to 18, like you don't have to have that big size. You can still be kind of scrawny and quick and squirrely on the ice. And I was a forward, so that was always me. I was always light. But when I got to college, freshman year, it's a different level because you're playing with grown men now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stronger guys. And so my coach after my freshman year came back and said, look, you got to go home and hit the weights, man. You got to come back with some size next year. And so I took that seriously. I went home and I put on 30 pounds in 3 months.
Oh damn.
Yeah. First time I ever lifted weights. First time I ever ate food, like really ate like I was trying to gain size.
Yeah.
When Bill Phillips came out with EAS, the creatine, he had the creatine monohydrate. I can't remember what it was called. Creatine, he had the V2G, which is vanadyl sulfate, and the GKG, which was the glutamine. So that whole little brand of his supplements at that time was taking that for the first time with all the training and the food. And I came back huge, ready to play the next year. Just it changed the game for me. Went from fast and quick on the ice to a lot slower and just kind of a
heavier player. Heavier player, right?
But I look back over the years and I was like, that's it, man. That left hand up on my stick was what caused that. And all the heavy training at that time, not knowing I had that imbalance, just reinforced it even more. So here I am 20 plus years later at 45 years old, still fighting this left shoulder elevation that, that pattern was stuck for so long. I mean, I was on skates since I was 5.
Yeah.
So that example is something that I always share with people just to give them an idea of how a pattern can live with you for that long. And even if you're aware of it, putting in as much work as someone like I do, I'm still fighting and balancing that thing out constantly. So imagine what is happening to your body if you're not paying attention to some of the patterns you've been holding as long. So.
Yeah, especially a one-sided sport like that, and it's not something you can avoid because that helps your performance.
Exactly.
And you need that. You need that ability.
Yep. It's a good point.
Well, and what's interesting is we talk about a lot where you get the trainers that don't understand that you need asymmetries in a lot of these sports to succeed, right?
Yeah.
So you get these corrective specialists that are like, I can correct that. And you're like, yeah, pump the brakes there, buddy.
Might not want to. Yeah. No, it's a good point. It's a good point. That's actually a really great point to bring up. It's something that I think that a lot of people do not consider. Look at like tennis players, right? I mean, you're a right-handed, left-handed tennis player. You're definitely going to have some imbalance. Right. I've seen it recently with like lacrosse players who I've been connecting with. Well, same thing. The whole thing is all about like a lot of them are cradling, trying to protect the
right
stick,
in here. Yeah.
anteriorly rotated, like they need that, they need that pattern, that dominance. But over time, that can create issues for them.
Yep.
So it's trying to strike that balance.
Yeah, lacrosse players, they're very rarely ambidextrous where they're throwing over both sides.
Right.
But yeah, and lacrosse is gaining a lot more popularity, so you're starting to see that. Yeah, it's a huge growing sport. Yeah,
it's been great to see how it's just really starting to come alive. The pro circuit, really something I didn't even realize was popping up as quickly as it is. It's been great, to connect with people in that sport.
Just talking about elite level sports, like they're not really elite level sports are not intended to be healthy. I mean, to get to these elite levels, you have to do different things to get there, repetitive things, hours and hours and hours of high level movements, speed, power, and it takes a toll on your body.
Yeah.
So all you can do is mitigate the effects as much as you can.
I mean, it's a philosophy that I say: train hard, recover harder. Right? It's the amount of time you're putting into your training. You should also equally be putting that same time into your recovery work. And trying to calm the nervous system. When you're taking that downtime, getting that proper rest and recovery. I'm a big advocate of supplementation. I think it's really important. There's certain supplements out there that can passively work to deregulate or downregulate the nervous system, downregulate the cortisol levels in the body. That can really give you an advantage, a competitive advantage coming back on the days that you're working hard. So yeah, no, I agree with you. When these pro athletes are getting paid, what they're getting paid, they're not going out there for an hour to train every day. I mean, they're putting in long days.
Long days.
Yeah.
And the ramifications, the consequences of what happens to them over a 15, 20-year career, they wouldn't take that back at all.
Oh, no.
There's nothing they would take back.
When you look at how many linemen are wearing knee braces in the NFL,
what's crazy is now a lot of times it's just customary. Even if you don't have the issue, you're made to wear one.
Sure.
As more of a preventative thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder if there's any data on that too. Have the knee braces actually prevented more knee injuries?
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder how much it would have caused restriction, and limitation, and not developing that lateral strength that they would need to handle a movement or a cut on the field.
I've actually, especially in college football, you will oftentimes see some programs where all the offensive linemen are all braced up.
Yeah, it's interesting. Equivalent of wearing a weight belt when you're lifting, as opposed to learning how to strengthen and condition your transverse abdominal.
Right.
So it's are you doing yourself a favor, or are you hurting yourself and holding yourself back? So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, because one of the first times I ever saw that, I popped in my head, I'm like, all 5 of those guys got jacked up knees? I'm like, that can't, everybody, all braces. And even
they're recruiting over here, right?
Yeah, and even the bench players coming in, the substitutes, I was like, so it must be just standard protocol, not just, recovery from injuries.
Are you guys finding, is stick mobility sort of taking a stronghold in a particular sport that you guys have seen?
Golf more than it.
Golf,
baseball, rotational, yeah. So that's
for a lot of pitchers too, because a lot of the stuff is all, that I've seen in some of the great movies is just opening up, right? So if you can open up with pitchers in particular, I've worked with a couple pitchers with mobility while helping to open up that whole pec, anterior delt, upper trap, scalenes to give them greater range of motion, which is where all their power comes from in that throw, aside from just driving off the mound with their legs. But they've got to have that whip coming off of that throw. So if they can open up that whole pec line, that front anterior delt, upper bicep, right, trap, scalenes, all of that's going to generate more power, more force in their throw. And keep that healthier, get them away from all the Tommy John surgeries that have been performed out there.
Yeah, I love using the longer sticks, getting back into those positions, and then being able to just actually apply that isometric, feeling that network and that strengthening through the entire arm line. Right? So I think for using a stick or any type of PVC, whatever you have access to, really is a huge benefit for overhead athletes or throwers just in particular.
Yeah, and then golf, obviously opening up the whole trunk line and QL and giving them more range of motion through their swing.
Yeah, hockey is one where I'd like to see us penetrate the market a little bit more. Been a little bit slow sledding there. And football, I think more from a recovery aspect for the football players.
For sure.
Because we don't see a lot of lateral line mobility work and they really need it, especially when you look at a lot of their movements. You're like, oh my God, how are you not getting the lateral line a little bit more prepared for these guys?
Yeah.
So you went to Quinnipiac and played hockey, huh? They got to think about where they're at now. They are a powerhouse.
We weren't quite as good back then. Our big claim to fame, my first year, we beat Army. So that was a big deal for us.
Oh.
But now they're winning NCAA championships. I mean, they're a team.
For a small school, too.
I know. Well, they have a great recruiting staff. I mean, they know how to recruit great players. The coach has done an incredible job over the years bringing in the right players. I think the school, when I went there, it had a 4-to-1 girl to guy ratio. So that's also encouraging to get some players.
So that's the recruiting pitch.
That's the recruiting pitch, huh? I finally realized the secret now.
The coach is like, press hard, 3 copies, pink copy is yours, sign the contract. Let's go.
I didn't realize. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Is it the same coach now that coached you?
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, man. He's been there.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. He's been there since 95.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Wow, that's awesome. You were one of the basically laying the foundation to an amazing program.
Laid down some of the groundwork, man. It was fun. It was fun to be part of that growing organization. But like I said, now they're definitely a threat out there now. They're a great team to watch. Especially
since when you look at where they've come up against much larger programs with much larger budgets. And they've exceeded them, and that's freaking awesome to see.
The Northeast, that's some great hockey comes out of that corner of the country. So they've got access to a lot of great, the prep school organization out there is incredible. There's a lot of top players that come out of those prep schools. So I think they just have done a really good job knowing that little section and knowing where to recruit from. Yeah.
Well, what's nice too is now the European players are seeing the value of playing collegiate hockey, which 20 years ago, it just wasn't happening.
Yep. Yeah. Even prep school, the guys, prep school hockey, in my opinion, for me, was probably the best hockey I ever played. My coach at the time was an ex-Detroit Red Winger, and the other coach played pro over in Europe. So to your point, the European, organizations are starting to recognize collegiate level, sports, and it's definitely starting to transition in. And you can see it in their style of hockey, like all the zone regrouping, and it's just that very Euro style, just constant flow of play is great. It's fun to watch.
So what do you got next on as far as your company growth wise? Any new concepts or anything coming up?
Yeah, we're actually releasing a new product. Mobility Wall is one of several products that we're going to be launching over the next year. So our goal was to build an ecosystem for the brand and try to continue to keep innovating as we come into the mobility world. There's a lot of ideas and concepts that I have that will help teach and encourage new movement for people that I think, general population can take advantage of, as well as professional athletes. So the next product that we're releasing is called the Chisel, CHIZL, and it's going to be one of our handheld manual devices that will have similar attachments, the way that you would plug the trigger point attachments into the mobility wall in the center point receiver. We've got 3 unique attachments that we created that have never been seen on the market that will plug into this little handheld device that we have. And the handheld device has a nice weight. It's got about 2-pound weight to it. So it gives you a nice weight, a nice grip that we spent 10 different iterations trying to find that perfect ergonomic grips. When you pick this thing up, it feels like you just slip your hand into a glove. And so these 3 tips can be used for people. It's sort of like mobility wall on the go. If you're sitting at your desk and you can't get up to get to the mobility wall or do any type of work, you can grab your chisel. If you're going to the gym, you want to have something to use quickly before you hit your workout, use the chisel. If you're traveling on an airplane or you're staying in hotels, bring the chisel with you. It just gives you some more mobile advantages to take with you around. And so the same attachments that you plug into your mobility wall also will plug into the chisel. So you have a lot of options to use for different attachments for this product. So, and then by Q4, we should be pre-selling our commercial unit, which is going to be a freestanding rack system that will be sold to different private gyms and commercial gyms like an Equinox or LA Fitness or, some of these bigger gyms, professional sports teams, locker rooms, but a freestanding rack system that has mobility wall built into it, as well as several other mobility wall tools and technique protocols on it that have never been seen before. So I'll save that one for the next podcast.
There you go.
Very nice.
Really cool, exciting stuff. Yeah, we're excited to continue to keep branching out. Excited to connect with incredible leaders like yourselves with Stick Mobility, build collaborations and ways that we can just continue to keep adding value to everybody out there who is interested in trying to improve themselves.
Fantastic. Social media, people can follow, get a hold of you.
Yep, absolutely. We have Instagram, obviously, where it's Mobility Wall, Mobility_Wall. And then Facebook, same thing, Mobility Wall. We have a private Facebook group. And also, too, we do every Monday, we do Mastering Your Mobility Wall live on YouTube.
Nice.
And all of those sessions are there. We have Mobility Wall coaches from across the country that are just various practitioners, chiropractors, PTs, personal trainers that have had a lot of experience using Mobility Wall, that are bringing some sort of proficiency that they believe is a focus they want to share. So they're bringing that to the Mobility Wall live sessions every Monday. And those are recorded, so they're also archived on the channel. So if somebody misses the live, they can always go back to the library. And so Instagram, Facebook, and then obviously our website, mobilitywall.com, is a great place to check out what we're doing. And anybody who wants to reach out to me personally, my email is chris@mobilitywall.com. And I'm answering every email that comes through, so you'll never get missed.
Well, that's good. I mean, Neil and I really appreciated you taking time out to jump on a call with us and really walk us through the Mobility Wall. We really enjoyed it, so thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. And to all the listeners out there, if you don't know what it is, definitely check it out. It is well worth your time, and we definitely think you'll enjoy the benefits of what it's going to do for you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate the time.
You're welcome.
Yep, you got it, man.
And to all the listeners out there, until next episode, be good to each other. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and whatever platform you're on, either Apple, iTunes, or Spotify, please, if you could leave a review, we'd appreciate that. If you have any questions that we can answer for you, be sure to leave those in the comments also.
If you're looking for more information on our education, our products, please go to www.stickmobility.com.
And also hit that subscribe button to that YouTube channel. And don't forget our live Instagram classes 3 times a week. If you want to join in, grab your sticks and hit that 45-minute class.